Ciao, Enrico.
Hey, ciao, Patrick.
All good?
Yeah, all good. Thank you.
What was I playing there, man?
I'm not sure, What's that?
Yeah, it's from this album, man. It just came out. The Second Circle. You ever heard of this? You got one in the back there, too, man.
I think I know this, yeah. I think I know this.
No, jokes aside, man, you must be happy about this, right? I followed the whole process and I saw this album taking shape in the last year or so, right? More or less.
Year and a half, yeah.
And yeah, the track, the EDB Dream Rivers track, the one I was playing, it's probably one of my favorites on the album. But you think it's kind of limiting, right, to pick one track from an album like this that should be taken as a whole, right?
Yeah, although the very first one, First Circle, as a single piece of vinyl, is actually easier to identify as a whole listening. You play A side and then you turn it and then it's the B side. This one, for the length of the tracks, we choose to go double pack. So it's a little bit trickier to have the full flow,
the whole experience.
A, B, C, D.
But you do have the feeling that you play the first track and you keep, all the side, they all make sense each side you pick. It kind of makes sense from start to finish.
That's the plan, yeah. That's the plan.
So, and that is kind of one of the things I've always been amused is your skills in compiling, because all your compilation, aside from the BB, from the archive, the BB comps, but there's always kind of a process, and it's not just placing tracks on a record, right? And it's not like only choosing the good tracks, it's also the sequence and how you place them on vinyl, right?
Yeah, the sequence on an album or on a compilation is very important, I think, yeah. Sometimes you pick certain tracks thinking about a certain sequence as a whole listening experience, yeah.
And thinking, about the tracks for an album like this album obviously had a very kind of specific concept and idea, and musically, it was a specific musical world. So is that different from doing other compilations when you're choosing tracks, basically?
Yeah, it's different, because when you do a compilation of, let's say, rare tracks, eclectic tracks, you have an idea of certain things that are unmissable. You really need to start from these 5-6 joints and then try to play around them. But it's more difficult to make a full story out of this, probably. In this case, being an album of ambient grooves or, more delicate songs, it's easier to create a narrative, but at the same time, you kind of need to program it a little bit. And the very first one was like a blank sheet, it was probably easier to program it. This time I had also the benchmark of the first one.
Right.
So it was a little bit more complicated to pick everything at the very beginning and try to not repeat ourselves, and try to make it a little bit wider in terms of sounds. I think the first one is more emotive. This one goes into more spaces. This is a little bit more complete musically, I would say. The very first one, I think, has got a little touch of emotion more.
So is that the reason why you thought of a set of a double pack, right? Because you couldn't really
get. And then some tracks were long, and I didn't want to compromise in terms of quality of the tracks, So yeah, the experience is probably different with a double pack, but still. And then if you buy it on Bandcamp, you can still download the digital and listen in the car, whatever you want.
And what about, ambient and jazz obviously are a big part of your musical background, I would say. But why did you think of, this is the 25th year anniversary project, let's say. The First Circle, was that, it wasn't for an anniversary or something?
No,
right?
that was the 20th anniversary.
Okay.
So in 2019... before, COVID or any thoughts about something like this, I thought I need to do something special. And also, it was clocking to number 50 on the catalog.
Ah, right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So I thought I've always been a fan of ambient music. And the name of the label Neroli came actually from an album from Brian Eno called Neroli. I thought it was a nice connection to actually try to do something like this, something different, and ask some of our artists or friends to provide a kind of a beatless track for this project, which is similar to what was happening in the very beginning of the label. When Neroli started, I was actually asking broken beat artists to give me a house track, from the same crew, to try to have something a little different,
Different.
And so for this project, some people like Kirk Degiorgio were, of course, used to make loads of ambient tracks, but, for example, Dego's one, even if it's short, it's definitely something a little bit special from him. And even Patrice Scott usually makes, more housey or down tempo. But this one that starts with plain pads and then builds is actually different from what you actually normally hear from him. So that was the idea on the first one. And the second one, basically, I thought the first one was difficult to top. Actually, even in the process of the first one, I asked Claude Young to participate, and he wasn't keen on the first one. And then when he heard the result, he said, count me in on the second one.
Right.
I had this on my mind for 2-3 years and was like, okay, I need to do a second one just to have Claude.
Okay. And do you think someone that doesn't know the label, if they listen to this one and the previous one, do you think it reflects the sound of Neroli? I know it's a conceptual thing for you that you explained, but do you think someone can get a hint of what the label is listening to these comps?
Depends how the listener is paying attention and how deep is the ear, because a lot of our releases are house or broken beat, and some people might not find any connection at all. Some people might find a palette of sound and sophistication, and but some might just think it's completely different genre.
Right. And you were saying about the beginning of Neroli. I mean, you mentioned the origin of the name, but how did that start? Because you had Archive before that, right?
Yeah. Archive was part of what was happening in West London, via Goya. There were quite a few labels, and everyone knows what was going on. And we were among the labels we were releasing at that time, from '98, and we were considered slightly more electronic, Detroit inspired, but with breaks. And Neroli was, because when I was playing, sometimes people would say, oh, you play too much house or stuff like this. So I actually asked some of the artists already on Archive to give me some more 4/4-ish tracks, And some were actually, more conventional, let's say, house. Some were kind of a hybrid of style, but actually is kind of a unique, like the Nutmeg, I would say, really define what we were trying to do, house, not house, but yeah.
This was the first one, right? This was the first one, right?
This is the first one, yeah.
Yeah, man. I still play this. Still got this in the bag. Which is the one? I mean, I think the Domu one, obviously, but then also the Chateau Flat. I mean, they're all good, man. This EP.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Domu track because I know he made an effort to make a 4/4 track, and when I remember when I got the CD, I listened in the car. And when there's the drop, I was like, wow, it really went in. I was really happy.
And so these early releases, I mean, you don't play a lot of your music on the label when you DJ, right? When you go back and listen to these early releases, do they still resonate with you? Obviously, you must like some more than others, but do you still feel after, 25 years that they're still... solid?
Most of them, I still like them a lot. Yeah. But then, in terms of playing, sometimes I feel like maybe my idea at the moment, maybe a slightly different palette of sound, or I might put something out, but probably not from the very, 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 very early years, maybe more in the mid phases of the label.
Well, you tend to play a lot of when you have music that's not ready out, but it's coming out on the label. That's one of your things, right? You kind of...
And when it's released, I stop.
Right. Right. No, it is true, right? Because every time you have a new release coming, I mean, you play that. It's one of the important things to test them out, see the reactions and all that. But then I don't remember hearing you play a lot of the music when it's out, you know, so that's interesting. And so these were the Goya years, you said, right? So you were living in London at the time, like 2000. When was this out? The first one, 2000.
No, actually, Neroli started in 2000. So by 2000, I was already back in Italy.
But you had the Goya experience. You told me stories about you used to go there often, right?
Oh yeah. When I was living there, I was going. I want to say every day, but like 3 times a week. Yeah, but were always new releases coming and always people, and I was really happy to visit Mike and Spencer, and there were also studios from Alex Atias, IG, Noel Watson. So it was always a meeting point, a hub, like just to go there, check what was new, what was coming out, and just bring in a CD of something that is upcoming and see what they were thinking. Yeah, it was great.
And those were the times where you had dub plates too, right? So that was the way people used to kind of check new releases in clubs and stuff.
There were some funny on CDs where you can play a CD, but a lot of people, including myself, were going to maybe Music House, for example, and cut a few plates of certain releases. Yeah.
But then in CDs, you mean the players, the CD players?
No, I mean we used to cut dub plates, but for example, a Velvet, I remember, no, Velvet, I'm not sure, but a Plastic People that had like a Denon CD player.
CD player, oh, okay.
CDs, you could actually drop it. So I was strictly vinyl back then, and so I was cutting some dub plates, yeah.
And then, if I don't remember wrong, there was a pause, right, in releases?
When Goya went down, I found myself with a bit of a stock, and I moved it around Europe for a while, before Rush Hour, then after Discograph, and I had a phase where I did 2-3 releases or something, but I wasn't really, let's say, in tune. It was a mix between the market at that particular time and the distributor, the people I was working with. It wasn't the same, and I was coming up with a Nutmeg release, and I was really pleased. With a new Dego, but I couldn't feel the same enthusiasm on the other side. So I was disillusioned, and I stopped the label for a couple of years.
But was that 2008? So probably CDs. I mean, was it a factor that DJs were playing like a lot of maybe CDs?
I think there was a general moment of crisis of vinyl sales, and everyone was dealing with it. And not everyone was so illuminated to judge what's the best thing to do, and certain distributors were maybe a bit protective, maybe a bit conservative, and so certain releases they couldn't really pigeonhole or categorize a certain release, and so it was a bit scary for certain people. Then I stopped for a while, and then a friend of mine, Stefano from K-Soul, from Militant Soul Record Store, he said, "Oh, you should try to go to Paris at Synchrophone, because there's one guy who's a fan of Broken Beat, of Goya stuff, called Didier." And so I reached out, and we started again with a new batch of artists and releases, and a lot of deep house stuff from, Ricardo Miranda, Trinidadian Deep, Jennifer Mayanja, Anthony Nicholson, and few other things like Stasis or Dego, which were more similar to the very first part of a catalog, And that was kind of cool.
This was when this came out, right?
Yeah.
This was like the beginning at Synchrophone. It was probably...
Not the beginning. We were already going there since a couple of years. But this is one of the ones that they really sold well. Yeah.
And it kind of started a string of releases kind of with this style. I mean, this Find a Way, this one here. still play this.
I think at that time, like Dego was releasing always a crazy CDs, CD only albums, and not many vinyls. And when this came out, and he kind of did well and was well received, encouraged him to kind of follow this project and give me other ones, which became even more successful, like Don't Stop. I think it reactivated also the vinyl releases of 2000 Black.
Okay, I'm gonna play this, man. Yeah, man, this is so good. It's one of my favorites, obviously. And one thing I'm gonna say, man, is like, this is not sexy house, right? Yeah, man. Why am I saying this?
I know, because one of the claims of the early releases was sexy house for the whole family. Was just a joke. Because all the broken beat stuff was really taken seriously, and and the house was always also seen as a bit like from Phil Asher, for example, was clearly house head, but some of the hours house, So when we started, we were trying to downplay ourselves.
Right. So it was more, yeah. So that was the beginning. I mean, that was
the very, very beginning, yeah.
So the attitude was kind of different. I mean, the way you wanted to put out music.
It was really playful, and we didn't expect to.
More playful,
it was really trying to be very tracky. The Oscar Shed is an example. Is bare minimal, tracky joint with really free sounds, and yeah.
Yeah, so going back to the distribution phases that you went through with the label, I remember those times because you were actually the one that introduced me to Synchrophone. So I think that was that was my first experience with the distribution. So it was kind of, I didn't know what to expect really, but it was cool, But yeah, during the years then, I remember we had this conversation loads of times before actually opening Mother Tongue with you, with Ornella and all the team here, that we were kind of not suffering, but I would say we were kind of asking ourselves why is it that there's no pressing plant and distribution actually run by people that have labels that know what it means to release independently, right? So yeah, how was that switch for you? Because you were obviously here, you were involved, but where did you notice the difference, the main difference, I would say?
Well, I think there's two elements. Okay, one thing is pressing, and for example, I've never seen any of my records pressed. I never interacted directly with the people who were cutting, or there's a problem with the press. Okay, we send it back, but there was no dialogue, no chance to explore situation where you weren't happy with the way the record was sounding and stuff. So obviously, when you have the pressing plant in your own town, and you can go and check and talk about all the different things from a vinyl to the sleeve, choose materials and all that is a big change. And then second thing, like I was used to Goya, used to go there, speak directly with people who are music lovers, which is important, really into your releases, not just selling one label or another, but really into what you're doing. And so I really, find this happening again fully, with Mother Tongue, So Mother Tongue is a Goya 2.0.
I've heard so many great stories about Goya, man. So it's kind of it's an honor, I would say. And do you remember what was the first Neroli record we pressed here?
I think Patrice Scott.
Patrice Scott.
The first one we pressed is Patrice Scott, and it was still via synchrophone. And then a few months later, Fred P, Reaching for the Stars.
Fred P. Reaching for the... And Patrice Scott, man, I've got... Yeah, man. I still got a copy. And I remember... You play Remember When from here, right? Most of the time. I mean, I'm a big fan of Chasing Dreams.
Yeah. See, to each his own. Yeah.
Yeah, so I still remember that. That was like, I would say, one of those really important moments for what we do here to press, you know, that record and those two records, and especially with the Reaching for the Stars of Fred P to start doing distribution was like, you know, when you kind of figure something great is happening kind of thing, right? So yeah, aside from pressing the records for you, obviously the fact of having this place here and you coming, you know,
almost every day.
Almost every day, aside from today, to, you know, that I think that was, for me, was the biggest, you know, value, because, I mean, all the meetings we had, exchanges, kind of call them A&R meetings with beers on, you know, what to do, new releases, even the new ones, you know, the Neroli Mother Tongue, the Glen Underground and the Javon that we did this year. You know, I think that is a big change. I think, I mean, for me especially, it's a big bonus, yeah. Right? Because you actually have the time one-to-one. I mean, that's the whole point of what we do, to try and have this one-to-one relationship when you can. So this makes me think about the relationship with artists that I know, because you tell me loads of times how much that is important to run a label and for releases, especially long-term relationships. And you are an example, because I mean, you worked with a lot of artists and a lot of them are still, you know, most of them, I'll say, you're still working with, right?
Yeah, and we have many releases from the same artist during these years. Like Trinidad and Deep did like 8. And
right?
Dego probably more or less the same, and so this Ricardo did 3 or 4. So yeah, to build a long-standing relationship with artists is something I really enjoy, and try every record to have something different from them, but still building a certain sound, you know, within the releases of the artist. I must admit that I like a lot. Very few artists. I'm not someone like, if you see my record collection, I like one release from this guy and another release from this guy, loads of white labels, random artists. No, I have like, okay, this guy has like 70 records, 50, 40. It's like the ones I like them a lot. And some others, like, see, it's okay, but it's not really hitting me, you know? So that's probably why I choose to work with certain artists, that I kind of marry them, you know?
Right. I mean, to run a label for 25 years, and I think, you know, with a very, very strong identity, but in a way kind of never repeating itself. And even what you're saying, I mean, working with a lot of the same artists, but still every record has a story of its own, right?
The ones we did with Glenn and Javon.
Yeah.
For example, those are 2 artists with a huge catalog and so many tracks. But I think the way we picked up the music, it sounds like it's picked up by us. People who know those artists and their catalog and their legacy understand the choices behind certain tracks and how this record has been A&R'd, you know?
It's true, yeah. And I think this is something I would say kind of important for someone who wants to start a label today. What would you say to someone who opens a new label? I mean, I would say one of the first things is like patience.
Well, to artists who make their own music, I always say like, do your own label. That's for sure.
Right. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
You have control of the whole thing, and you really know how to develop the label the way you want 100%. To people who actually don't make music and want to release music from others, I'll say try not to compromise and actually try to get the best music possible for you, but you're proud of a release, feel like your record is actually better than other releases are outside in the flesh in the record stores, and like, wow, mine is really standing out, you know. That's really when things happen, when you really know that your record is really strong, you know.
And from a DJ perspective, I would say that what you always say, and I agree with, is like you should put out music that you would play, if you're a DJ, obviously, that you would play out, right?
I personally prefer like to put out a 4-track EP. So on a piece of wax, fill it with like really good music, 4 tracks of great music. Instead of, for example, there's people who prefer like, oh, one banger, one side, super loud. I'm the opposite. I prefer like to have like a full EP, 4 tracks that you bring home and you're like, okay, I spend my 14, 15 euro on 4 tracks. It's really value for money. I'm on that tip, you know. While other people like, oh yeah, I'll buy digital, and then when I buy a vinyl, I want something very loud, very useful for that moment. I'm not like that.
No, because it's like it's about collecting too, you know, and not only
After 6 months, that single slab of wax is possibly dated, you know, and then you go back to the EP, and there's always one track you go back to, and you rediscover years later. I don't know, it makes more sense to me.
Yeah, and that is the best when you go back, you know, in your own collection and actually find something you forgot about or you weren't playing for a while. That's one of the best. I mean, for me, it's one of the best feelings, right? And in terms of, so do you think it's easier or harder to run a label today compared to when you, I know it's different times and everything, but what are the differences do you think?
Well, connection with the artist is completely different because way back, you know, like you couldn't really DM on Instagram or, you know, like reach anyone like you do now, you know. So that's the first thing, you know. And second, way back I was in London and I was meeting everyone, so I could actually be in the same room with a lot of people. And for example, now that we are here in Italy, you know, you don't really meet them more often, you know. So these two things really collide. But in terms of possibilities, I would say it was more exciting back then. There were more people putting a little bit more effort in their tracks. Now production sometimes they're a little bit quick and people are too they send demos even too easy, you know. There's people who send a few demos every week.
Yeah, you need to take your time. Yeah, but on what you said about the connections, I mean, I obviously understand that today it's easier to be in touch and to make things happen in a quite, you know, short amount of time.
There's no deeper connection, of course.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that at the time you really had to put effort to actually make things happen, right? I mean, I'll remember that, but this happened with, I'm sure, a lot of other artists, but I remember the story you told me with Theo, that I mean, it was like a letter or something. No, it wasn't. You ringing on the phone, talk to someone on the other side of the world that you don't know. You send him a letter or an email, or you send him a promo of a record, and then you have this phone call, and then maybe you meet somewhere in the world and make things happen. I mean, that takes a lot more time, but that builds.
2 years later, the record is out.
Right.
2 years later, yeah.
So that's the difference, I would say, which is obviously better today, but at the same time, going back to what you said, it takes people rush things.
Yeah, and also artists are a bit rushy as well, you know?
Yeah.
Some younger artists should develop their craft and, you know, release after release, step by step, without rushing it. And I've seen a couple of cases where, you know, like things could have developed in a different way, and when there was too much rush to kind of appear on other labels, and maybe like the quality decreased instead of increasing, you know, like and you're like, I wouldn't.
No, it's true. And there's quite a few examples of like a lot of artists like putting out a lot of releases really close to each other and then kind of having a big pause kind of way, right?
Yeah, and you know, like it's true that maybe the people have less attention on a long term, but you know, having all these releases one after another, I don't know. Like I think it creates confusion to me. You know, like.
And so it's like the curation over hype.
Yeah, the quality control is important.
That's the whole point, right? Okay, so Yoda. What is the one thing you learned in these 25 years?
Oh, to keep going.
Keep it going.
Yeah.
Keep digging.
No, keep digging. Overrated. But you know, keep going and trust your ear.
The digging thing is like, I mean, we're both vinyl heads, but both of us feel the same way in terms of, you know, vinyl being an essential medium, right? But at the same time, we're not so, I mean, we always have this conversation. I mean, I'm not so, if DJ is, I mean, you can play anything you want, but it's all about what you're playing and not what you're using to play in a way. Obviously, if you're a vinyl DJ and you have a vinyl collection, it's easier that you can actually play tunes, right?
Yeah, but you know, like I'll give an example. For example, I used to love going to listen to drum and bass, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, what was important was like going to Chemistry and Storm and hear all these doublets of new upcoming music from Volcov, Digital Spirit, whatever. So I prefer like to hear a DJ who come with all upcoming unreleased stuff on USB and give me a really a fresh set, make me feel like some new stuff rather than okay, I heard this a million times, or okay, a sound that is already heard. I'm really a sucker for fresh new music.
Okay, man. So, well, thank you for your time.
See you tomorrow.
Yes, I'll see you here tomorrow. Yeah, man. And I'm gonna play another one from the second circle, the Meftah track 7.
7.
I'll see you tomorrow, man. Ciao.
Thank you.